welcome back to the gorgeously bleak forest of Poland, if that's not too much of an oxymoron. So today I want to talk all about the neutral density filter and what I think would be the best one to buy if you're looking to buy one for the very first time. You know, people that are looking to get into long exposure photography. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So another stunning day to explore this landscape that I'm absolutely loving at the minute. A couple of subjects that I'm going to be hiking up to today where we can use the neutral density filters, and I can explain to you why I believe there's one ND filter, one strength of ND filter, let's say, that I think would be the best one to buy to start out with, if you're only going to buy one, of course. So come with me. Honestly, this is just, look at it. I'm only like 20 minutes from Lancaster. I feel like I'm in, I don't even know what to say. It's just a complete nothingness of a moorland. I must admit though, I love it, and that's why I'm back here. I do think the opportunity for photography is class here. Now, let's get into the topic. Which ND filter should you buy first? Obviously, if you can only buy one. I'm going to answer this question now just to avoid the risk of dragging it on for longer than it needs to be, you know. This is based on only my experiences. Of course, this is something that's quite subjective, but for me, if I could go back in time when I bought my first ND filter, I would have bought a 10 stop. That's my advice. If you're gonna buy your first one, get a 10 stop. When I first got one, it was a 6 stop, and I kind of regretted that a little bit. You know, it's still a great filter, but I felt like I was quite limited to, you know, sunsets, sunrises, golden hours and blue hours even. When it was a little bit darker out, sometimes I get away with it when it was quite gloomy. But yeah, it wasn't strong enough, I felt. And we'll get into the why, you know, in a bit more depth throughout this video when we're actually taking photographs. But the main reason as to why I think a 10 stop is just, I think it's very versatile. You know, there's occasions when you can get really long exposures with a 10 stop. And when it's bright outside, you can get much shorter exposures. For example, if you're shooting waterfalls or running water, moving water or something like that, running water, taking a photograph of the bathroom tap. So, like I said, we'll get into some landscape photography today. I'm actually hiking up to a Tarn. It should only be about another 20 minutes this way. There's no sight of it yet, but yeah, shouldn't be too much further. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for me to be able to explain a bit more practically about why I think a 10 stop is a great first filter. So, we'll get there eventually. See you in a bit. So, how cool is this? A Tarn, a real, natural, non-man-made Tarn here in the forest of Poland. So cool. I just found this on like you know, OS maps, topography maps last night, and I just thought that's worth a hike up to. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's no Windermere, it's an absolute puddle in comparison, but it's just so cool. I love that there's no one here, there's no roads, no cars, toilets, shops, anything like that. I've just got it all to myself, and I could spend a little bit of time shouting at a camera and setting up the Nikon as well to take some shots. So, less of the chat, and let's get set up. You can see I quite like the background vista over there, so I'm definitely going to stay at this end of the Tarn for now at least, and just try and get set up at these shores somewhere, probably just down here, but I'm just going to fine tune the composition a little bit. Just make sure that's focusing on my head. It's a bit bright, that is. There we go. So, as you can see, we're set up for the first shot of the day. Now, I'm going to put a bit of a graphic up on your screen just there, so you know what I'm talking about. Now, if you've never seen this before, this is just an app that helps us to calculate how long of a shutter speed we need by the time we've got our neutral density filters on the front of our lens. So it can be a little bit confusing if it's the first time you've seen it, but trust me, it's really simple once you get the grasp of it. I suppose you could say that about anything, but it's a really useful tool if you're getting into long exposure photography. I use the Nissi app, big fan. So you can see this top dial here that I'm moving. That's my normal shutter speed, and that means, you know, what is my shutter speed before I put any filters on the front. Nice and simple. Then the middle dial, this one here, is what filter have you got on the front, what are you using, and then the bottom one is your shutter speed with the filter on the front. So that's the app making those calculations for us. So again, it can be quite complicated if it's the first time you've seen it, but yeah, great tool for the long exposure photography. So you can see there, if I'd have only put a 6-stop on the front of this lens, I'd have only got a 4-second exposure. With for what I'm trying to achieve here, that wouldn't have been long enough. I wouldn't have even bothered putting it on. So it actually makes a lot of sense to me now how I would have felt really limited by only having a 6-stop filter. It's not strong enough, basically. You know, if we're out on the coast, we're shooting waves where the water's moving much quicker, that would have been perfect 6-stop filter. Here, we've just got a consistent wind that's whipping across the Tarn. It's giving us all these ripples, which I don't like. I find it really distracting, you know. So what I'm trying to achieve here is that kind of sheet of ice effect, long exposure effect. You know, it looks like glass. I absolutely love that. It's definitely arguable here that you don't even need to shoot as a long exposure. Some people wouldn't like that, but it's my preference on this occasion. It's my photograph, and that's what you've got to decide yourself. You know, how long of an exposure do you want? So you can see if I move this across here to a 10-stop filter, which is the one that I've got on the front, 1 minute and 8-second long exposure. Now that's more like it. That is going to give us that sheet of glass effect and that real creative long exposure feel, which I really like. So I hope you can see that it's more about the strength of the 10-stop ND filter that is the filter's strength over the 6-stop. You know, the 6-stop is great for many occasions, but this video is all about what should be your first filter, right? And that's why I'm saying the 10-stop, because you get so much versatility from it. I really felt like, I remember when I had my 6-stop, I didn't use it half as much as I would have liked. I remember being at the side of lakes down in New Zealand near Queenstown, wanting to get real 1-2 minute long exposures in the middle of the day, and I just couldn't because the 6-stop filter wasn't strong enough. So yeah, I hope all of that makes sense. Now, composition briefly. Not going to be the best shot in the world, but it's definitely going to be a good example of the long exposure. You can see in the foreground here, we've got these reeds. We've got some on this side and some here, and I've just tried to get them on the left and right so they're nicely balanced. You know, we've got a nice balance to the foreground. And then deeper into the image, we're in a sort of mini valley here, which is nice. It keeps the image quite compact. You know, there's no point in your eyes shooting off to the left or the right. And then, of course, we've got this beautiful vista in the background where we've got some more of the Bowland Fells or hills. And the sky's really nice. You know, this is one reason why I want to smooth out this water, because I don't want there to be any texture in the Tarn. There's so much texture in the sky that if we've got texture here on the sides and in the Tarn, for me that would be really distracting. You know, they'd all be competing against each other, where with this kind of sheet of ice effect, this glass effect with the Tarn, it's nice and smooth, it simplifies the scene, and I definitely much prefer it. So 10-stop filter on the front, 1 minute and 8-second long exposure at f14 and ISO 100. I hope you like this one. So all of this being this immediate landscape that you can see, all these moors, most of it is like just access land, but because it's so, I suppose, untamed in a way around here in terms of walking and amenities, it's actually just, I think I said it before, I just feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere, like in the best way possible. It feels so isolated and desolate, but it means that there's no paths, like proper paths, and so I'm just kind of going off OS maps and trying to make my way to the next subject, which I'm nearly at now. It's just there, it looks like a series of waterfalls, and I'm going to probably follow this river back down, which is kind of in the direction towards my car, and see if there's anything else. But it's looking good from here, guys, it's looking good. So we're nearly there. I'm going to get down there and talk a little bit more about neutral density filters. Oh, I have found, same as my last video, guys, here in the forest of Bowland, Lancashire. So unexpected, I found a little paradise again. Look at this. We've got these cascades running down, and then there's a kind of, see if I can get a bit further around. There's a point where they all kind of meet, all the rivers, and there's a bigger waterfall just there. Honestly, this is class. Oh man, just looking at maps, finding something of interest and just hiking to it. This exploration in its most basic form. This is quality. So obviously feeling positive for the photography. I'm going to get down to that bigger waterfall down that way. So right, I'll meet you down there and we'll get set up. So we have finally made it down to what seems to be the main waterfall in this area. There must be about 20 different waterfalls or cascades in this. Honestly, it is so cool. But yeah, this looks like it's the biggest one. So naturally it's the one that I've kind of gravitated towards. I hope you can hear me. It's quite fast flowing, which is a good thing, but it means it might be quite loud. So I've had to come up to a pretty precarious position here to get the composition that I'm after for this particular shot at least. I'm up on this rock in the middle of the river and I'm kind of shooting down towards the waterfall. You can see now I've angled the camera downwards. I've got the wide angle Takina 11 to 16mm lens on because I'm wanting to get a little bit of this rock in the foreground actually as well. So contrary to what I was saying in one of my in my video last week when I was shooting that particular waterfall, I'll put that image up on the screen. That image I took really, I said I wanted to get something really simple, didn't want to mess around with foreground. Here, I'm messing around with foreground. Now let's get into the ND filters again. So here probably isn't the best example, but I've got the 10 stop filter on the front. I'm going to take two shots here, right? First shot is with the 10 stop ND filter on the front, and it's going to give me, I've adjusted my settings a little bit, I'm getting about a 40-second long exposure. And then I'm going to take a second image, which is going to be without any ND filters at all, and it's going to be about 1/4 of a second. Going back to something that I was saying earlier about subjectivity and personal preference, you know, there's no right or wrong way to do this. My preference is 1/4 of a second, no ND filters, which is pretty stupid considering the title of this video, but so be it. But that's the fun of it, that's the fun of photography, you know. So what I'm going to do is take both of the shots and then I'll put them up on the screen so you can see them both, and please comment below, let me know which is your favourite, the super long exposure or the sort of relatively short exposure 1/4 of a second one. But I still think it shows the versatility of the 10 stop ND filter in particular. Yes, you could still do this with the 6 stop ND filter. In fact, the 6 stop would probably be better suited, but you wouldn't have been able to do what we did earlier with the 6 stop ND filter. So you see how it kind of covers everything, you know, the versatility comes back into it again. Whereby, yes, you might have to adjust the settings a little bit, you might have to increase the ISO, but you can still do it. You can still get the real long exposures, whereas the 6-stop, like I was saying earlier, we were limited. Again, I hope that makes sense. So yeah, the composition, I've just found this small little pool of water here, which I really like. Stuck them in the foreground, and then we've got these 2 or 3 other rocks that are all pointing in the same direction up to the waterfall. I've centralised the pool of water, and I've actually centralised the waterfall as well, which I like. Shooting in a portrait orientation, you can see it here obviously, and I've angled downwards so that I don't get any of the sky in the frame at all. It doesn't add anything to the shot. I just find it a bit of a distraction. So yeah, those 2 images, one that's going to be a short exposure, one that's going to be a longer exposure with the 10-stop ND filter on, and then I'm probably going to get a bit further around here behind my head around this side of the waterfall to try and get something a little bit more simple, really, a little bit less complex and without as much foreground. So I hope you like these images. So I hope those waterfall images came out all right, and yeah, I hope this video has been a good example, I suppose, of why I think the 10-stop filter is the best one to buy to start out with. You know, if you can only buy one, that's the whole point in this. You know, if you can get a 6-stop, a 10-stop and a 15-stop, say, fantastic. But the 10-stop, as you can tell, there is pretty much dead in the middle. So in one way or another, even if you might have to adjust your settings, it gives you the best of everything that long exposure has to offer as well. Another thing that I wanted to try today but I couldn't was the 10-stop will get movement in the clouds, and the 6-stop will as well, but only if it's dark out, you know. So yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. I've got a long old walk back to the car now. The head torch will be out. Please give the video a like if you have a quick second, as always, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Whoa, I'm shattered. Out!